on BBC Coventry and Warwickshire. But first of all, it's Thursday. It's 8 minutes to 5. It's time to go to the movies. James Luxford is here. Hello, James.
Hello.
Writer for the Radio Times, reviewer for Metro newspaper with a selection of movies for the weekend and week ahead. Anywhere you want to start in particular?
How about with Dumbo? It's Tim Burton's remake of the classic Disney story of a circus elephant who can fly.
You have something very rare. You have wonder. You have mystique. You have magic. Wow! Come with me. Together, we can soar on that elephant's wings.
Oh, how Tim Burton is that?
Absolutely.
For people who don't know, obviously he's the dark, isn't he, behind things like Edward Scissorhands?
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
The Johnny Depp, Willy Wonka, and
Willy Wonka, Dark Shadows, Alice in Wonderland. Gone a very big budget as of the last sort of 10, 20 years, would you say?
Yeah.
He was known for these very quirky things like Nightmare Before Christmas and things like that. I didn't like this, I'm afraid. I'm always been a bit sceptical of the recent rash of live-action remakes of... we've got 3 this year. We got The Lion King and Aladdin after this one. And... I'm not against remakes, but I always think there should be a purpose, and I don't think there's a purpose here other than Tim Burton is very good at making it look very pretty. There's not a story there that really grabs you by the heartstrings. That the original had its problems, but it really got you.
Yeah.
And here, I think it looks beautiful. It's got a great cast. Colin Farrell.
I was going to say the voices on it.
Michael Keaton, Danny DeVito reuniting for the first time since Batman Returns. Eva Green. No one really gets enough to do, I don't think. And unfortunately, I think... I think children are always going to like kind of the visual spectacular.
Yeah.
But I think what makes something memorable is a good story, and this just doesn't have it.
Dumbo in Coventry and Warwickshire cinemas this weekend. Next up, a comedy?
Yes, a British comedy, Eaten by Lions. It's about a young man searching for his real father with the help of his half-brother.
I think I'm going to go find my dad. Gran knew where he was all along. She just never let on.
Where you going then? India?
No. Blackpool?
Straight away. It's got you laughing.
Absolutely, yes. And I thought this was a very, very sweet film. It's a tiny budgeted film comparison to something like Dumbo. British made, very, centric to us.
Yeah.
It's set on the seaside, and it's got a really big heart. I think the 2 young men who play the brothers in the lead are just fantastic, particularly Jack Carroll, who plays the half-brother. You may have remember him. He's a comedian who was very popular on Britain's Got Talent a few years ago, and it's just a star-making performance, I think. It's just got so much personality on the big screen, and it will be interesting seeing how he goes up against his fellow cast members, people like Johnny Vegas, who have smaller roles in the movie. He really holds his own, and I think that's a really interesting part of the film, but just overall very sweet, very lovely story.
Okay. There's sort of a rash of these sort of earthy, Englishy movies. I'm going to talk about The Fisherman for a second, obviously, because which was so, if you know that part of the world of Cornwall and about Cornwall and Cornwall fishing villages, it was so, intrinsic of that. And this suggests to me it's very, again, as you said there, it's very, if you're from outside Great Britain, you just wouldn't get this at all, would you? It's not going to travel.
Yeah, I think so. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're made for relatively little money, so these aren't big products that have to be sold all over the world. So you can concentrate a bit more on the story, a bit more on the art, a bit more on making people laugh, which this really does. And something like the Fisherman's Friends, is it?
Yeah.
It can appeal to a regional audience, and maybe with things like Calendar Girls and The Full Monty, they were British stories, but they also translated just because they're great stories.
Yeah. Okay, that's the cinema. What about a DVD or online pick for the weekend?
This is The Old Man and the Gun, Robert Redford's final acting role, playing an aging bank robber looking for one last big heist.
Excuse me, I'd like to open up an account.
Well, great. What type of account do you have in mind?
This kind. This kind.
You said he was armed.
He had a gun.
You saw it.
Well, he was also sort of a gentleman.
He was very polite.
He seemed like a nice enough fella.
Look at that. Is he smiling?
It's Robert Redford. Okay.
Yeah, and this was one of my favourite films of last year.
Really?
I just loved it. If you're a fan of sort of 70s cinema, this really captures that spirit. And it's so refreshing to see something that isn't a superhero, that isn't a big budget franchise
Production
movie.
number. Yeah.
Exactly, and it plays perfectly to the star that is Robert Redford. Captures his charm, captures his personality, and it's got an excellent cast who all seem to be just so happy to be sharing the screen with him for one last time. Casey Affleck, Sissy Spacek, some really good actors in there, and I think, as I said, if you're a fan of the aesthetic and the themes of 70s cinema, this is a must-see.
Without giving away the plot, at the end, is there some kind of nod to the fact that this is his final acting role? Is there a sort of a little wink at the screen or something that you think, oh man, what a way to go out on? Or
There was something. There's kind of the one of the scenes between Casey Affleck and Robert Redford, without giving anything away, there is a little nod that if you are familiar with Robert Redford's past films, particularly The Sting, there's a little reference, and I remember seeing it, and in the press screening, and everyone went, and if you're an expert on those films or know The Sting very well, you look out for it.
Little homage. Love it. Okay, James, always good. Thanks very much indeed. James Luxford from Radio Times and Metro Newspaper with his picks for movies across Coventry and Warwickshire this weekend.
BBC Coventry and Warwickshire Travel.